I think there's a lot. I think it's cultural. There's a definite cultural element.
Background, raising religion, just how they feel about social issues, economics. If you're rich, you're going to vote probably different than someone who's really poor. So, just all these social factors kind of tie into what you believe.
Is just a lack of public understanding about the strengths of public education, because movies like this one, although they expose some real issues, real problems, they're talking about real problems as they exist in a fairly small percentage of schools. It's really important, and it's an issue that has to be addressed with, but I think sometimes the public thinks that it's all broken when the truth is that it isn't. There certainly are important opportunities for us to improve. We need to grapple with those. We need to be serious about addressing those, but it isn't as dysfunctional as some would have us believe.
I'm often asked, because I was both the superintendent of a school district and now I run this organization, people always say, what's wrong with education in America today? Why are we doing so poorly? And oftentimes people say, give us what the biggest issue in education is. And I always refuse to answer that question. I refuse to answer it because actually what is wrong with our system is pretty complicated. And when you try to distill it down to just one thing, that it sort of implies that if you solve that one thing, you're going to fix all of the problems, when in fact that is actually not true. But people don't like taking no for an answer, and so usually it's the press, the media, they're very persistent, and they goad me on. It's like, oh, come on, tell us what it is. It's the teachers' union, isn't it? Or the parents, or we don't have enough money. Come on, tell us what it is, right? And you've actually probably heard a lot of this too. You go to your cocktail parties, you and your friends sort of bemoan the state of public education in our country, and then inevitably it sort of devolves down into what we need to do is invest more in our schools. The question is that really right? So I'm going to show you some data. The first slide, when Americans are asked how much money they think we are spending on public education in America today, what do they say? They say that they think we spend about $4,000 a year per kid. The reality is that we spend several times that, actually about $10,000 a year. So there is a huge disconnect. And that is not the only disconnect, because when those same people are asked, they will very confidently tell you that they believe if we spent more money on education, we would get better results. So take a look at this. The red line shows the expenditure growth on education over the last few decades in this country, and the blue line shows our academic achievement levels of our children in both reading and math. And as you can see, we have grown several times what we're spending, and yet our children's academic progress has remained pretty stagnant. This creates an incredibly difficult dynamic in these tough economic times, where people are trying to figure out what to cut in the budgets, et cetera, because if, for example, in the last few decades, we had tripled the expenditures and the achievement levels had also tripled, then you would be able to say, okay, if you cut our budget by 10%, this is the loss that you're going to see. But we actually can't show that at all. In fact, in the last couple of years, there have been several states that have cut their education budgets and seen their academic achievement levels rise. So we're in this really
education. Public education is not a business. They're not in it to make money, supposedly. You're in it to benefit the kids. If that's the case, then the answer is not to throw money into it. It's not a business. You need to get parents involved. Let me ask a question. Maybe you get bad grades and whatever, but if you ever got good grades, what was the reason why you got good grades? Now, we're talking elementary, middle school here. What's the reason? Chances are the reason was you didn't want to disappoint your parents, you didn't want your parents to beat you, you didn't want your parents to take away your Nintendo 64, you didn't want your parents to punish you, make you feel like you disappointed them, whatever the case may be. In other words, there's a parents involved. Chances are in elementary school you weren't like, I want to do my best, and instead of watching Nickelodeon, I'm going to study my spelling test because I want to have a personal achievement in my life. Probably not. Now, if you're in university, that may be the case. You want, okay, I want a good job, I need good grades. Fine. Elementary, middle school, you were probably focused on what your parents were thinking, correct? So, in these schools that have bad test grades, or people that don't show up to school, or people that drop out, the reason is simple. Either they don't have a parent because they're in jail, or they don't have a parent because they don't know who their parent is, or they have one parent, or neither parents, or whatever, or the parents are drug addicts, or the parents are in and out of jail, like I said before, or the parents simply don't care, or their parents have bad education experiences when they were kids, because back in the day, education had a bad reputation. You know, you could beat kids, you know, all this other stuff you couldn't do today. So, what happens? These parents have kids, they send them to school, and then when there's a parent-teacher conference, and the parent and the teacher tells the parent, oh, your kid's, you know, kind of misbehaving. It's like, oh no, it's your fault. You're the teacher, and you must be behaving wrongly. Why? Because they had a bad experience when they were a kid. So they want to blame the teacher just like they did back then. Even though the system is different. Even though we don't beat kids anymore. The teacher is out there to help the student.